Right.
Screen. All right, so we're going to kick this off. This is a webinar I'm excited for. That this is also our first feature with Bryan Mitchell, and I've known Bryan for several years, and we'll give you some more background on that. The whole intent is really to just give you guys, the customers, more knowledge from other perspectives as well. And I think Bryan brings something else to the table that's unique. I talk more high level about service and about other topics. What Bryan's got is more of the how-tos, the nuts and bolts that we can dive even deeper into service, which we're still in the service topic. And a little bit of background on Bryan. Well, before I do that, I do want this to be interactive. So we're going to be going back and forth. I'm going to stop Bryan. I'm going to ask him questions and dive deeper into certain subjects. And I would encourage you too, if you're on the call, pop in those questions, and we're not going to answer them privately. We'll answer them out loud and kind of have some really good conversation. That's what I would say that's the goal. A little bit of background on Bryan, and maybe you can talk about your background. I mean, you know it probably better than I do. Then I'll give you, or you can take over the screen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I started by building boats. This was in the 70s and 80s, and got into roofing in the 90s. And then I realized the roof is just an upside down boat, right? Or a boat is just an upside down roof. So I realized that I probably belonged there. But I got into estimating in the 90s, and then a friend of mine hired me, and he had a company losing business, and we started building a service department in that roofing company. 1 truck, 2 trucks. When I left there a few years ago, we had like over 30 trucks. But the interesting thing is that it really doesn't change much. The principles are the same. It just gets a little more complex, not more complicated. So that's what really surprised me. As I got to a point where the company was huge, I look back at my notes of when we got started. It's like, oh, this is the same stuff. We're just doing more of it,
Yeah. Awesome. There's another slide you had over as well.
Yeah. So, you can tell by my accent that I haven't learned to learn the language yet. And I absolutely love this country. We came over, my wife and I sailed over on a sailboat from South Africa. My kids were born in the States. My grandkids were born in the States. Every time I come back through immigration and they say, "Welcome back, sir," I want to kiss the guy right on the mouth and, say thank you for having me, because I know people sort of think America's in tough times, and it's definitely different to what it was 30 years ago, but it's not Africa. Everything works. It's an incredible place to be. So thanks for having me. And now they even let me vote, which is kind of scary, but there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I know you've got some stuff prepared. I appreciate you spending the time to put some slides together that complement the actual implementation, and I would say in terms of the software application as well. Bryan will take us through his slides, and again, I'll interject, I'll ask questions, and I'll try to tie some correlations to the software. At the end of this, I'll actually go into the system and we'll run through a work order. I want this to be something that you guys can all take something out of, as much as you can out of this. So we'll let you go forward.
Cool. And I think there are a couple of people on that I know. They'll be able to help me with some of this presentation, but let's just talk about service business. And, of course, everybody here is probably in the service and repair business already. But one of the whys that I learned about, and of course, you can look back when you're older and say that I learned this. I didn't react to this very well at the time, but economic changes is a great time to be in service. And I'm just going to show you some graphs of what happened to us during the last economic downturn. And I won't mention the R word, but you know, if we head into a bit of a dip, this is what happened to us. We were cruising along. We got the business going. 2006, we were doing really well, and the economic times changed. You know, we had the banking crisis, and you can see we just kind of collapsed as a company. But let me show you what that looked like when you look at the re-roof business to the service business. And the blue line is the service business. And we just kept growing right through that hard time. Whereas the re-roof business, you can see a significant decline. So the good thing about being in service is it sets you up for success in re-roofing. And re-roofing sets you up for success in service. You know, they complement each other. But what we found is during the bad times when people couldn't really afford to invest, you know, big capital expenditures, we kept them dry. So when the money started freeing up, we were, all of those guys had us as their roofer of choice, you know, so we got a whole lot of re-roofing business. This slide just shows you some of that proportional growth. You know, the lighter blue line was the re-roofing side, and the darker blue was the service side, and then the gray is the combine of the two. But as the one grew, the other grew. And, you know, I don't know which one grows which, but certainly coming out of the decline, service is what put us in a great spot for future re-roofing and service. I've heard people talk about this, some of the consultants and what have you, and they say you probably, for every dollar of service you sell, you're going to sell about $3 of re-roofing. In our case, it was more like $5 to $6 per dollar. But it,
so you're talking about like this relationship between the amount of service and the amount of re-roof and the amount of total sales. Would you say that because you were able to get the 5 versus the 3 to 1 because of the way you integrated sales with service? Because it's not necessarily like just because I do service means I'm going to get all this work. What do you think the method or the reason why you're able to get 5 versus the 3?
Well, I think because on the re-roof side, we took the approach of very careful estimating. So when you come to sales for service, you need, I believe, and this is what worked for us, you need a lot of sales guys to sell service scope of work. When it comes to re-roofing, what you really need is a lot of estimators and a few sales guys. Because if you can estimate well, you win jobs at the estimating table. You know, we get these re-roof opportunities, and if you can value engineer that so that you get a spot at the table because you got a nice low number, you don't always do the work with that low number, but you get a spot at the table. And so we won a lot of re-roof work. And, you know, so I don't know if that grew the service or the service grew the re-roof opportunities, but that's kind of how it panned out for us. Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Another way to look at that is, you know, as a percentage. So, and you just see it's incredibly consistent. I mean, we're talking about a company that went to $50 million, but the percentage of service just kept going with it. So it's encouraging. I mean, it means the one promotes the other. It doesn't mean that you have to, well, after you told me to put this thing on silent, my iPad still grabs my phone. So I don't know if you heard that in the background.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you got that, you know, even with huge numbers, it's amazing, you know, how that continued to grow. But, you know, I think the story behind this is that all roofs leak sometimes, right? So, and I've often said that there are 3 reasons for roofs leaking. One of them, the primary one, is act of God. You know, roofs age, they get older. They left in the sun 24 hours, or, you know, all day, all the day in the sun and night. So 24 hours out in the elements. So acts of God are going to cause a roof to leak. The other thing is we even know this up front. Sealants you look at the spec sheet for sealant, it's got a 8 to 10 year lifespan. That means your roof will leak when those sealants are destroyed through ultraviolet rays or whatever it is, right? So acts of God. The other one is these acts of idiots, because you get people on your roof doing stupid stuff. At the moment I'm in Florida, and you drive around here, and even though it's hurricane season, there are balloons on roofs. They're like huge things going on, and guys just nail them into the membrane. People dropping tools, those kind of things. And the problem with a lot of this stuff is when water enters the roof system, like in this case, we got a metal deck, you can see those flutes is the metal, the water is going to run down those. So it's going to find a weld hole and enter the building. So it doesn't necessarily matter where that water is going into the roof system. It's where it goes into the building that the owner complained about, right? So you can fix a hole and he's still got a leak sometimes. So that's act of idiot is the other thing that causes these problems. And then the solution, I think, is maintenance. And we do really a poor job, or we have, of keeping roofs maintained. It's in, everybody's got a nice NDL warranty, but they don't, and it says maintain the roof, keep records, but we don't push that as roofers. Dentists push it, car manufacturers push it, HVAC guys push it. It's just normal. This thing's in the sun all the time. So, repairs, absolutely, but maintenance is really, I think, how you get your business stable, and how you really build residual income. And how often, I mean, you've been on a lot of roofs. Well, you get up there and you actually cannot believe what you find, right? You've got a garden growing up there, bullets. I found dog pelts on one roof. So it's, I don't think that was damaging the roof, but what was a little suspect was the restaurants below it. Don't go eat there afterwards. So that, the opportunity is incredible. We got, I'm sure Houston, I mean, I've been there, you got tons of buildings that are going to leak. So I think something we have to ask ourselves is, how can we put together a healthy service company? What can we do, or a repair company? What can we do to make it healthy and work well? And maybe we could spend a few minutes just talking about the different roles within a service company, because I know your software handles workflows and different roles. And so, this probably will tie in a little bit. Unfortunately, roofing companies are very often like silo driven. Marketing and sales doesn't mix a whole lot with the technicians who get on the roof, right? So we got to have some really good communication systems, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But and when you look at this, I'm talking about roles. So I'm not talking about people. If you've got a $500,000 roofing company, don't think you have to go hire 100 people now to run it. All you have to do is make sure that these roles are taken care of, that somebody is actually doing the marketing, because in the repair and service and maintenance business, you have to do marketing. You have to find leads. You got to go out and get them. It's not like you get opportunities to put a quote in. If you're lucky, you'll get some calls, but you got to put your name out there to be able to get leads. And then on the sales side, we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but not all leads are equal, right? So we need to qualify them, and qualify them well. We also want to get paid quickly. So We want to find clients that'll pay. Ideally, I want to get paid 50% before I start work. So you got to do a lot of homework in that area as well. And the other thing about service is you can't really build a big service company just on time and material. You need to enlarge your scopes, get a decent scope of work so that because the cost to get the two guys or guy out to the building, put the ladder against the side, get all the stuff up there, do the repair, those costs are consistent, whether it's a big job or a small job. So if we can get our average scope of work up, we're going to be able to make more money. And then you get into the production side. Here's where you got these communication things again, because somehow we got to communicate to production what we sold, and then they need to execute what we sold. And of course, to support production, we got to have some warehouse and equipment structure, and then accounting. So that's just kind of a layout of a typical roofing company. This is a different view of it. I'll talk about this a little bit here. On the marketing side, I feel like we often miss the boat on having everybody in the company understanding roofing. And the person who answers the phone should really have a basic understanding of roofing, right? And I was blown away. I worked at a big company, and people would come and go, and I'd ask them a question about roofing. They'd know nothing about it. So we started a little roofing class. We'd teach everyone in our company about roofing, and we actually spread that as part of our sales and marketing plan. But, so even though your marketing person might never go on a roof, get their hands dirty, we need to get them on a roof to be able to show them what they're talking about, what the problems that people run into. And
to that,
go, yeah.
You talk about like more knowledge in the company and people calling into the business and having them be taken care of, right? While I always struggle with that too, is training everyone in roofing. That's a challenge. I love what you guys did with having that training center kind of built into the company and continuing to train all of the employees on roofing. I think that's brilliant. I always saw it as such a challenge. So my goal was always to train everybody on our overarching message to the customers, right? And that was this life cycle concept of, we care about the entire lifespan of your roof system. But if they called into the office and the front, whoever's at the front phone answered it, needed to be able to portray that same message to the client base. So just to hit on that, I think that kind of ties together. But the knowledge, we're always training, right? We're never done training, train, and never stop.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's not that difficult. I put together an 80-slide PowerPoint deck that just explains the different types of roof decks, metal, concrete, tectum, gypsum, that kind of thing, lightweight concrete, and then the different types of insulation. And the great thing is with manufacturers, will give you samples like they're going out of fashion. They'll send you a box in a heartbeat. So we'd pass samples around, we'd go through this PowerPoint. I only had to make it once. I still have it, 25 years later. It hasn't really changed. Okay, now we've got, induction welding and that sort of thing, but it hasn't changed that much. So you add a couple of slides here and there, and then you can train it every quarter or so. I kind of found like people forget everything every 3 months, so you got to train them again. And so on the sales side, maybe I'll just mention this. Something I learned probably late is that if I gave my account managers an assistant, I increased their production by 50 to 75, sometimes 100, sometimes I'd double the guy's production. So a big lesson for me was once I had 2 successful sales people, I would get them an assistant to help them be more successful. And it sounded great for the sales guys because they're like, oh man, I got like an assistant. But
Yeah.
I promise you, this assistant becomes their boss. Because now their schedule is down tight. They get their proposals in on time. They follow up, so it really makes sales guys are usually not that good at that stuff, right? I've seen several guys get fired just because they can't keep the CRM up to date. Meanwhile, these are brilliant salespeople. So that's something that just really paid huge dividends. And that person is usually a whole lot less expensive than a salesperson.
Mhm. I like that.
Then on the production side, now here you're seeing a lot going on. But as you grow and as you get, a bigger group like this, once you've got like 3 trucks, you're going to start needing some kind of production manager, right? So I I like to look at it in those terms is, okay, we're going to get this information from sales. Now we got to digest it. We got to make sure that we've got the materials and the skills to do it. We got to schedule it with the client. Then we got to hand it over to the field to get it done. And typically through the sales process, you don't really have technicians or like experienced roofers involved. So you want to make sure that that's looked at really carefully on the operations side. And this is where you get paid, right? You only get paid when you're on the roof. When you're fixing the roof, that's the only time you're earning money. So making sure you got that schedule tight, making sure those guys are the job costing's got to be in place. A project manager goes a long way. When you got these 3 trucks going, we'd have one project manager for every 3 to 6 trucks. And, once you got to 6 trucks, it kind of got out of hand. But he could really make these guys efficient. So it's worth investing the money in having that in place.
When it goes to 6, do you suggest that they have like a superintendent at that level with multiple project managers, or what's the split?
Yeah, so I've always looked at growing the service department kind of like rice on a checkerboard. That you put 1 piece and then you put 2 and then you put 4. I'm always trying to get my lead technician to train his assistant to become a lead technician. And so then your project manager is managing those guys. Now you've got 6 trucks. Maybe one of those lead technicians can be promoted to a project manager. And then his assistant becomes a lead technician. Now you get a helper in, so you're trying to kind of grow it from within so that you don't have to. It's hard to teach people your systems. It's so much easier when you bring people in to sort of learn your systems from a leader. And so you, if you can, promote within.
And this is really necessary, especially if you sell a lot of service, right? Because the truth is you're reaching 4, 5, 10,000, $15,000 scopes. There's estimating, there's planning, there's ordering, and then there's making sure that the materials make it to the truck and that the scope of work is articulated to the crew. We have we have the model obviously inside of Centerpoint to help bring this all the way through the process, but that project manager role, especially with where you guys came from, is critical.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the other thing is you grow. The way that we would grow is we'd look at our backlog, right? If we had a 3-week backlog on the repair side and the service side of the business, we're going to start losing clients, because who's going to wait 3 weeks to get a leak fixed? People have drowned by then in that building, so when you get a big backlog and you're seeing that consistently, then you put another truck on. But you got to be prepared for that. So as you say, you're always training, educating. I use a lot of the NRCA materials because they got some great manuals for training people.
Good idea.
At the end of the day, we're always in business for our clients, right? We're not going to do much if we only keep ourselves happy. So of course, our clients, we're going to offer different services. We can replace, we can do new construction if you want to, but you could do tear off and re-roofing. Restoration and recovery, this could be torching a cap sheet, it could be a reskinning, or it could be a coating. And then repair. This is, you see a tile roof here. I am a big fan of doing repairs on multifamily, um, because it just seems like when there's an HOA involved, they can never decide when to re-roof. So you can earn $1 million doing repairs on that building, and then another 2 million when they eventually decide to re-roof it. So multifamily is a great area to be in. But I think this, and we've spoken about this before. Well, to me, this is like the key to selling service and maintenance, is being able to explain to your client that their roof has a life cycle and a lifetime. I got to the point I wanted to send every roof a birthday card, or the owner of every roof a birthday card for his roof, because what happens when you get old? You start going gray, you get glasses, the walking stick, a hearing aid, the diapers, etc. It's exactly the same thing with the roof. And if you're not taking care of it, it'll get old a whole lot quicker. Because as soon as that moisture's in the insulation or getting down to the deck, that's destruction, right? You get a good wind come over, it's going to suck that roof right off because you've lost the adhesion to the concrete, or you've got big moisture patches. If you get a moisture survey and you've got more than 25% of the roof is wet, you can't actually repair it anymore. So being able to have your client understand that you're really in the asset protection business. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep your roof in good shape, and I'm going to slow down the aging process. But even more importantly, I'm going to be there at a time when I can advise you when to do a restoration or a recover. And if you think about our average re-roof was like $300,000. So that was a few years ago. It's probably 400,000 now, right? If I can keep half of that or more than half of that in your pocket for 10 or 15 years longer than my competition by doing a restoration, I'm a huge asset for you. If you've got 10 buildings, now we're talking millions of dollars that I'm keeping, for you. So, and some of my clients had 16, 20 buildings. It's a huge thing for them to have and they need a roofer they can trust, who can get up there and make sure the roof stays in good nick. So I use this document all the time to explain to people why they got to take care of their roof.
Yeah, I like that. And when do you grade it? In which specific scenarios would you grade it? Would that be every work order you go out on? Would that be just the sales reps doing inspections? When do you find the opportunity to deliver a grade to a client?
Yeah. So the grading isn't an exact science, right? What the most important thing about grading is to have a method that we all agree on. That if we get on this roof, you're going to say it's a C, I'm going to say it's a C plus or a C minus, but we're going to be in the same ballpark, just so that, we've got a guideline. But yeah, I'll grade it the first time I get on it, and then I'll grade it every time we maintain it. So by maintaining it, your initial maintenance is probably going to bring the grade up, but the roof's still going to deteriorate over time. It should be slower because you're maintaining it, but there'll still be deterioration. So you keep that grading process going the whole way through the life cycle.
Yeah, and it's living. I mean, these roofs, they're living. So having the information updated each site visit, I'm a big believer in that. Whether it's a service guy re-updating the inspection report, or it's a sales rep going out on their routine checkups, so be it. Always update.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so, I mean, here you see a happy building owner, right? So that's what you want your client to look like. But the reason that he should be happy is, first of all, we're keeping his manufacturer's warranty in good standing, right? So, you still kind of want to say good luck claiming on that. But anyhow, that's what a warranty is there, and you got to keep that in good shape. The next thing, we already spoke about extending the life of the roof through a coating or whatever. Um, I found with property managers, if I could get them under a maintenance agreement and say to them, look, if you pay your maintenance, if it leaks, we'll fix it. First of all, that was profitable for us. But secondly, it was great for them because the property manager's got a lot of stuff going on. Elevators, paint, windows, doors. The roof is a high ticket part of their business, but it's probably only 20% of what they have to do in any given time. So if I've got an easy way for a property manager to budget or a building owner to budget his roof, I get this happy chap over here again. So he's got peace of mind. Also, he keeps his tenants, because they're going to lose tenants if they don't, if it's leaking, and if they don't have a roofer coming to take care of them. If it's a manufacturing facility, we can minimize their downtime, because in fact, I got a call out to one of the huge auto place out here west of us, and the mechanics couldn't work on the cars because there was water coming in all the time. And I went on the roof, and their gutters were blocked. I mean, there wasn't a leak. Their gutters were blocked, and that was causing the water to, flood in there. So I don't know how much it cost them, where these guys had to move the car off the lift. They couldn't work. Their tools were getting wet. Just simple maintenance would have saved them a whole lot of time.
Oh, totally. And I had a similar experience with, I think it was Tyson Foods, who had a portion of their building locked down, and it was costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars, $50,000 or something like that per day. And it just compounded.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just because of a roof, it's incredible what that can cost. So, I mean, that we covered, I think some of the owner stuff, but this is so obviously I'm old. This is a radio station we used to listen to a lot in my day, WIIFM. And I think people are still listening to it. You can tell me. It's what's in it for me. Because, of course, we want to keep our clients happy, but we want to be profitable, right? By doing what we do. And so here's a couple of things that you can think about. First of all, if you're only doing re-roofing, you go and do an estimate or an inspection because somebody wants a re-roof, right? You're reacting. But if you doing repairs, service, and maintenance, you're more proactive, especially on the maintenance side. You can actually be out ahead and doing your maintenance work if it's slow. If it's raining, you're getting calls because there are leaks. As soon as you're on a roof, you've got an opportunity to find what else is wrong with that roof, because 90% of them aren't being maintained. So you're going to find stuff that should have been done, that should be done. And then, this consistent revenue in slow periods, we had several trucks that all they did was ongoing maintenance. But when things were slow, we would double that amount of trucks doing that. So we didn't have to send our guys home. We kept our good workers because we had a good maintenance program. And I got a couple of guys adding 20 of those a month. So if you think about that, over a 3 or 4 year period, you can have hundreds of maintenance agreements, average $1,500 to $2,000. You're talking about opening the doors with a couple of $1 million in business before you do anything.
That's like just in service alone. You mentioned something, finding things that need to be repaired or corrected before your client does or before somebody else does. I felt like there was a few conversations I had where contractors were bidding repairs, and I was asking, like, why are we bidding all these repairs all of a sudden? But to your point, if we would have found that first and discovered it first, the client may have never even gotten to the point of needing to bid repairs. It was probably a leak that came in, they got a quote, and then the quote was big, and then they wanted to go get more quotes. That's probably the typical route of needing the multiple bids.
Yeah, no, I mean, how many times have you been and presented a proposal to a client and they spend more time looking at the front picture, which is a picture of their roof, because they've never been up there, or it's people don't. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it. So we go up there and it's a mess, but if you keep it in good shape, man, it's just such a great investment for these people, and they're appreciative of it. Referrals become a normal thing because I took care of this guy. He no longer has this problem with his tenants, or he has no longer got downtime, or he hasn't got a huge roof expense. He's got just a good number that makes sense every year. So you'll get a lot of referrals from that. And because you're maintaining it, you're the one who's going to know when it's going to need a coating, right? Very often we weren't even put in a bid situation for a coating or even a reskin, because it was, I'll just have my roofer do it. Now when it came to a tear off and a re-roof, pretty much all the time that was a bid work. But because you got a great relationship, there's a possibility you're going to get a last look, right? Or you're going to be in a position to negotiate. So it's great for your re-roof business as well. And it's profitable. I don't know what you see as average, Will, but 65% gross margin is what I see in the service business all the time, which means if you do $100 worth of work, $65 goes into not your pocket, unfortunately, but into gross profit. But I've got clients who are saying they're in the 70s and they don't know where to stop. They're not getting any pushback on pricing.
Yeah, I hear very similar to 70s. And a lot of our customers too are starting off in service, starting to build and build and build. And in the beginning, you're doing a lot of time and material, and you're trying to convert that into more contract work. Obviously, those margins are smaller, but when you average it all out, I think that it would be consistent with what I see.
Yeah, your re-roof business is going to be a lot lower margin. Here's another thing. My goal on every service or repair opportunity was to own that roof. I kind of want to take it off the street. I don't want another roofer getting on there. So here's a little sign we made up. And once we got a maintenance agreement, I'd stick this wherever it would stick on the roof, on the roof hatch, on the access door, on a couple of just wherever we could. Because, a couple of good things happened. It says here, if you do any work on this, it's going to ruin the warranty. So we'd get calls from plumbers, we'd get calls from HVAC guys, we'd get call from just people who got on the roof, said, I saw your sign, So it's a good marketing opportunity as well. But that's your goal is, can we take this roof off the street so that we own it? And
question.
We're the ones making.
I think everybody should be doing that. And a good way to help take that roof off the street is to do those inspections, review it with the decision maker, get a service agreement or get a maintenance agreement in place, and stick those things all over the place. I'm all about it.
Yeah, cool. So we can probably get a little theoretical here for a while. I was one of those guys who would, I'd have to be in the office. Well, nobody told me to, but I was in the office 4:35 in the morning, trying to understand the numbers. You're trying to grow a business. You can't play with numbers in the middle of the day when it's going wild there. But so let's just look at this. This is theory, but it's certainly practical. Let's say you got $1 million service company, or you got a goal of $1 million service and repair and maintenance company. And you wanted to look at what should my weekly activity look like? What should it look like on an average week? So in order to do $1 million, and I'll get into a little more specific numbers in about 3 slides here, but just top level look at it. You're going to need about 19 leads a week, that turn into about 15 proposals. So what you got to see in that, well, is that your marketing department is going to bring in those leads, but they must be very qualified leads, because we want to get 15 proposals out of it, right? So that's it's no good getting 100 leads and I only get 15 proposals, and it's no good getting 19 leads and I only get 4 proposals. You know, not all leads are equal, right? We need good leads, and then those proposals, you got to have a good closing ratio. So you got to be tracking your sales guys. You know, what's our closing ratio? I think you should be at about 60%. And if you're not, maybe you got a problem with the sales guy, maybe you got a problem with your presentation, maybe there's a problem with your price, but about 60%. So we get 19 leads, we got 15 proposals, we got about 8 contracts. That means and these numbers, that comes to 14. So we lost one in the middle there, but the other 6 are potential business still, because they're not closed out yet. So you don't take them off your books until you know somebody else has gone and done the work. But so you've got a pipeline of 6. You put the proposals out and you're waiting. Then your service business needs a backlog, right? You can't just have guys finish all the work you've got to do today and, okay, we'll wait to see, get some more work tomorrow. So you want to have a nice backlog and a low accounts receivable. You don't want your money on the street for long. So there's just a broad brush look of what it could look like. Here's a deeper look, and we'll even go just a little bit deeper than this. But so leads and proposals are going to turn into dollars, you know. So what's that average dollar sale? And for your 8 contracts, you know, what's your average dollar? It looks like we've got about $2,500 average. Usually there's a discrepancy between your proposal dollar and your sales dollar. So what's that percentage? Keep an eye on it, because, you know, if you're not selling what you're proposing and there's a big gap, then we got to see what the issue is. People actually want choices, and we'll get into that as well. And then here's your pipeline, you know, so that pipeline's out there. You've got that. This is just a week, right? So that you got that $15,000, that's potential business. You're probably going to, you know, the life cycle of a service project is only about 3 weeks, but there's that 15,000 out there for the next 3 weeks that you could potentially close. You got your backlog, and then you got to figure out your backlog hours. So now we know, okay, 286 hours, 2 guys, 20 hours a day, you know, we've got 10, 12 days of work out in front of us. So we're in relatively good shape. And there's your dollar backlog, and then your accounts receivable and your number of accounts. And this is a low number. My goal was to keep our money off the street, like under 25 days as your days of sales outstanding or your accounts receivable. So 50% deposit, payment on completion. Theoretically, you could have it under 20 days. And cash is king, right? If you got money, there's all kinds of things you can do for your business. So I hope I don't put anybody to sleep here, but just as far as numbers is concerned, I created a little calculator for this. Here's my gross margin, 65% in blue. Gross profit per labor hour, that's a number I'd encourage everybody to use. Take your gross profit divided by the number of hours of a project and figure out what your gross profit per labor hour is, because that's going to help you forecast how many trucks you need, how many technicians you need, how many work days and work hours you need. And then here's an average job size. We'd like it to be double that. Our appointment ratio, so lead to appointment, 80% is a terrific number if you can achieve that. And then how many roofs can you inspect in a day? And what's your sales closing ratio? You know, 65 I think is better, but for this example, I did 55. So the weekly activity we're looking at on the previous screen is this bottom table here. But the top table is what your $1 million looks like in an annual activity. You're going to need 900 leads. So, you know, when I say you got to go out and do some marketing, that's, you know, 4 a day or so, you know. That's how many appointments you're going to need. That's your closing ratio. You're going to need a lot of contracts. And so that's where software is so key, is because service is very intense in the number of projects you have to do and the amount of paperwork you have to generate to get paid or to get a proposal out. So, you know, there's 700 of them. We were in the thousands. And then how many inspectors do I need? How many man hours is that going to equate to? And because of that, how many working days and how many trucks will I need? You know, how many men will I need? How many trucks will I need? And you'll notice here, I can do $1 million with 2 trucks if I get these numbers right. So it's not that complicated. I mean, I started this on a spreadsheet just to help myself forecast. And then a friend of mine built it into a little software package. But these are important numbers, that not only to track what happened last week, but what's going to happen next week or next year, or, you know, we're in the last quarter now. What are our plans for next year? So get to know your numbers well.
I like that view. I like the simple view too, where you need to look at all aspects of your business. You know, you can't just be only looking for the next sale. We've got to make sure we have new opportunities coming in, consistently coming in. We're on roofs, we're converting those site visits to quotes lead to jobs. And if we're missing any of those pieces, we're going to run out of work to do. When you talk about leads, and you're saying leads, maybe just expand on what a lead means to you. Like, what do you mean by leads?
Yeah, so to me, you know, I said already, not all leads are equal, right? So we got to have opportunities coming in where people actually need the services of a roofer. So if I get so the way to get that is for people to know that you offer repair and maintenance, right? So you got to be out in the marketplace telling every building owner, property manager that you can reach that you're available to do work for them. So to me, a lead is somebody calls in and says, I got a leak, or I've got an HVAC replacement, I need a roofer up there, or I'm going to buy a building, I need an inspection. I'm going to sell a building, I need an inspection. Or I've approached them and said, are you maintaining your roof? You know, do you know that your warranty requires maintenance? But so we're looking for people who make roofing decisions, and that's where we want to focus our energies.
Okay, cool. So lead is really all incoming opportunity, however you got it, because I think some people get caught in terminology. You know, when you say the term estimate, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah,
you know, very similar. So lead is really in Centerpoint, it starts as an opportunity, and it even says lead there, but then that lead could end up becoming sold what? Sold coating, sold re-roof, sold service. So this I like.
exactly. Yeah, so you got a lead, and in fact here you can, you know, in the green here we generate leads, right? Then we need to do some qualifying, and I think what happens is a lead is a suspect, and then if you qualify it, your lead, it becomes a prospect, right? And if it's a prospect, now we're going to go and pursue it. So, you know, you've got your leads coming in, you do some qualification, and then this coordinator person, if you've in a position to have this person, and I'd highly recommend it, that person can coordinate with the account manager so that he doesn't have to do a lot of paperwork. He's out there with his face in front of the client, assigning that lead to an account manager or inspector or whatever you want to call them. Talk about terminology. I mean, oh my gosh, the roofing industry. So in Florida, you know, roofing cement is called bull. You know, you go into California and you're talking about bull, and people are looking at you, you know, oh, Texas, you know, the bull's a whole different story, right? So terminology is definitely tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your account manager is going to get that opportunity. he might need the help of an estimator in order to get a proposal out. He's either going to turn it into a contract, or it's going to go into this pipeline of potential contracts, and you need somebody following up on that. So you can see your sales coordinator's got a lot of work to do. It's not like a, glorified secretary here. This is somebody who's busy. They helping coordinate, they're helping finish proposals, they're following up on the proposals that were delivered, and then they're moving the sales onto the service operation, and that has to be in a package that service can understand and execute, and that's going to create your backlog up top there.
Love it. A good, clean process. And sometimes you have to just step back and then write out your workflows, write out your processes, understand them. And like you were saying earlier, you've got one person doing multiple roles, but make sure all those functions or roles are being covered. And this is a good way to do that.
Yeah, of course, and this is the simple part, right? Because now we start throwing people and personalities into it, and now you got your hands full. Right? But at least let's do what we can do, on the simple side. So I don't know how long you want to go on for. I think we're probably approaching an hour, but we could cover another topic or two if you like.
Yeah, because I think the last two you have here are really good ones, and we got time. Well, we got time.
Okay, cool. All right. So this is something I talk about all the time. I learned this, the fact of a pyramid or a triangle is that it's most stable if it sits on its base, right? The Egyptians did not build them upside down. These are smart guys. It's not going to fall over if you've got a powerful base. So if you want to grow your business, or even if you just want to start your business, you got to start with that strong base of production capability. You've got to have technicians who can fix leaks. If you don't fix a leak properly, you're going to get called back, right? So there goes your profit. And if it isn't fixed after that, you'll be waiting for a call back for a long time, because people will be saying, don't use that guy, right? So this is important. You got to be good at what you do. The next thing that I feel like is critical is everybody in the company has to understand what you do. What are like you mentioned earlier, what are the products and services that we offer? Mm-hmm. Time and material. What does that mean? Time and material. What does an NTE mean? What does the scope of work mean? What does a tenant build out or a tenant upfit work mean? What's a warranty? What's a maintenance agreement? We've only got like 5 or 6. It's not that complicated. But so we got a huge opportunity here. We can write down what they are, and we can write down our process for each of those. And now we can improve it as we go. But everybody should know it. If you should be able to grab anybody in the hallway and say, how do we handle a scope of work job? Tell me how that works. And I don't care if they the janitor, the receptionist, or the technician, let's all know it. It's a roofing company. Mm-hmm. So then the next thing that's important is that you're estimating well. You got to have your prices with material and labor. And I think you do a good job of this, Will, is you get on average EPDM or TPO roof, you're going to come across 20 or 30 problems, and you can fix them all with 7 or 8 materials. It's not that complicated, and we know the sort of things that are going to be wrong. You're going to have open laps, you're going to have base flashings, you're going to have pitch pans that need to be filled, you're going to have sheet metal screws that are missing grommets. We know what we're going to run into. Let's pre-estimate it so that it's easy to sell, because service is a quick business. We want to be first guy in, deliver the proposal, get a check, and get out of there before the competition even knows it exists. So NRCA does a beautiful job with this. I'd encourage you to look at that. And then we've spent quite a bit of time already talking about opportunities in sales. I'll mention that I found it very hard to teach a roofer how to sell. But I was able to teach hardworking, intelligent young people who could sell about roofing. And that was a game changer for us. So I could take a guy off the street, you know, and teach him about the deficiencies on a roof, different roof systems, and give him a price list, and he could sell. He can put a proposal together. So I've told this story a lot, but the last three guys that I trained, and I'm still in touch with all three of them, they had no roofing experience. One of them is now top salesman at a $60 million roofing company. And the other two sold over $1 million in service last year, service, repairs and service. In fact, I got a call from Richard last month. He sold $500,000 last month in repairs and service. One guy. So, you know, that's the way to do it. And then, of course, you know, cash is king. So we've got to have a good way of administrating our paperwork, our paper flow, and how we get the money, and, you know, how we contact the client for the money, and then of course track our margins.
So you talked about deficiencies, identifying them and estimating them, and then you take somebody and you need to teach them how to do that. Now, where do you kind of start if you take someone off the street who may have a good, you know, personality, maybe even a sales background, knows nothing about roofing? Where do you start is my first question. And then second, how do they quote so quickly? I mean, yeah, we have libraries and we have pricing within those libraries that help estimate it, which you've done ahead of time, but how does that kind of flow in your mind?
Yeah. So if I hire a guy off the street, the first thing I have to teach him about is roofing, right? So, and I found one of the best ways to teach people about roofing is to make them estimate. Mm-hmm. Let's go walk a roof, and, you know, we can do a core sample, but we're going to figure out what it's going to take to fix that roof. So you take them through, we can look at existing estimates, we can do, it's a lot of math. They need to understand it. But once you've got them estimating, now they're understanding, you know, how a roof system goes together, because it's not logical sometimes, right? So you start there, and now the next thing you have to teach them on different roof systems, what are the typical problems you're going to run into? And this is where it's great to have pictures. NRCA, as I say, did a beautiful job. But and over the years, I've got thousands of pictures, I'm sure you have too, of different problems on roofs. And so then we can walk a modified roof and you say, okay, you see that? That's alligatoring. You see that? That's an open seam. You see that? That's a blister, and that's a big blister. That's going to cause a problem. It's on a seam. You know, so you teach them that. And then if you've got your pricing pre-done, you know, because I come from an estimating background. So when I put a price together for an open lap, I've got all the material and labor included in that price. So now the guy knows this is a real number. I've got my margin in there. Now you just count the open laps, multiply it by that price, take a picture of it. I think you have an explanation of the problem and the solution in your software. Yep. I got a proposal. So you can get a guy really effective within a couple of months. And what I would do with the guys is I'd say, if you come across something you don't know and I'm not with you, FaceTime me. I'll look at it. I'll give you a number for it. And you're probably not going to hurt yourself too badly. And if it's something you don't have in your database, add it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Love it.
Cool. So, all right, maybe last thing that maybe, or whatever you can let me know, but yeah. You know, we're talking about those silos, right? I feel like it's so important to have these bridging documents between marketing and sales to the guys who are going to prepare the project. When you sell something, you really have to understand what it's going to take to fix it. You know, you got to know how long it's going to take. You got to understand what materials are involved, and that all comes from an estimator, but it's only done once. You'd pre-do it, but now you can pass that project folder on with the correct address, the correct roof system, the correct condition of the roof. do you need a ladder, or are you going up a service elevator, or, how are we getting up there? So that they can prepare that project and also make sure the technicians they're going to assign the work to know what they're going to doing. It's no good sending a technician up there who's never welded a pipe boot before. And now, he's got to go up there and weld a pipe boot. He's going to come back with blisters, and you're going to have a leaking pipe boot, right? So that's important to know what they're going to do. And so when they go out and execute, now they're going to be able to get it done right, and they need to know how much time they got to do it in. I didn't want people doing things like less than 85% of the time. If they did that, I'm suspect. Why were you so quick? And then if it was like 120% of the time, why were you so slow? So you got to job cost and make sure that you're in some kind of parameter, because quite frankly, to fix, 10 foot of base flashing in New York or Florida or Texas, you're probably going to do 15 foot an hour. So 3/4 of an hour. It's not really very different from one area to another. And then again, another bridge is those guys who do the work have to really report well on what they've done, so that when you send in your invoicing, you're very clear, you got great pictures, you got proof that you did an incredible job and you deserve to be paid quickly.
Awesome. This is good stuff. I think that is probably enough. I know how many slides do you think you got?
I got hundreds. Will. So we won't kill everybody.
We'll be here all
I know
day.
there are a couple of guys on this call. I recognize they're ready for their first scotch already, and so am I. So
that's good. I appreciate you doing that. I want to take a little bit of time to go into Centerpoint, and I'm going to do my best to hit on some of what you